Black box. When they opened the case, the air in the analysis bay felt colder. It was a standard flight recorder, ruggedized and char-scarred. Its once-orange casing turned the dull, bruised color of old blood. 2 impact fractures spiderwebbed across the plating, as if something had tried to claw its way out from inside. The technicians wheeled it in on a mag sled, keeping their hands on the push bar as though they did not trust the brakes. Dr. Eliza Rowe watched from behind the quarantine glass, chin resting lightly on her folded hands, willing her pulse to slow down. It was just hardware, a block of alloy and memory. Still, the air felt wrong. "Unit ID?" she asked. One of the techs, Malik, glanced at the recorder's panel just to avoid looking at its surface too long. "Registry tag matches the freighter Onyx Field," he said. "Neptune route, vanished 3 weeks ago, found adrift yesterday by a salvaged tug, no crew." "Eliza," came a voice over the comm. It was Commander Hale from the observation booth above her. "This is the one the salvage team mentioned in their report, the headaches." Eliza allowed herself a small sigh. "Headaches aren't contagious, Commander." "Spare me," Hale said, though his tone lacked its usual bite. "You read the same logs I did. Every one of those crews started complaining the minute they powered the box. Vertigo, nausea. 3 of them said they heard something underneath the static." "And then they shut it down and sealed it," Eliza said. "No fatalities, no psychotic episodes, no bleeding from the eyes." "Yet." She rolled her eyes where he could not see. "We're in a shielded lab, protected from leaks, with 3 layers of software filters between the raw data and my ears. This is what we do. You wouldn't have pulled me from Mars orbital if it was." There was a pause. "Just go slow," Hale said, "and keep the volume low." Eliza almost smiled. The gruff old bastard actually sounded worried. "Understood, Commander," she said. "You can start the recording." The tech settled the black box into the mounting cradle. Cables snapped into ports with soft magnetic clicks. A series of status LEDs flickered, stuttered, then settled into a slow, unhealthy pulse, green edging toward amber. Malik gave a small shiver and stepped back as though the thing might bite him. "Eliza," he said, his voice slightly muffled through the glass. "We will be monitoring signal leakage as per protocol. If anything spikes, we cut power." "Good," she said. "No heroics today." He nodded and left in a hurry, as if the recorder had a gravity well all its own. Alone with the box, separated only by layered composites and a lifetime of training, Eliza keyed in her access code. The lab lights dimmed by a fraction as the black box synced its aging memory core with her analysis suite. A progress bar crawled across her console. "Download 12 minutes, 17 seconds of audio source. FDR Onyx Field 04 status. Integrity. 86% partial corruption embedded meta. Encrypted." 12 minutes, she murmured. "Last 12 minutes before they went dark," Hale confirmed over the line. "The rest of the flight was normal, routine chatter, course corrections. Then this." "Got it," Eliza said. She began by muting everything. Step 1, never trust live playback. She routed the raw waveform into a virtual sandbox, splitting the feed into a waterfall display, spectral analyzer, and waveform visualization. It appeared on her screen as a dense, churned block of noise, what you'd expect from a black box recording during a catastrophe. Impacts, alarms, people shouting, then nothing. Only it was not nothing. Underneath the jagged spikes and clipped peaks, there was a floor of constant energy, a thread of sound that never dipped to zero. "Odd," Eliza said to herself, "and a little neat." She added bandpass filters, notching out the usual clutter. Hull reverberation, engine hum, comms crosstalk. Slowly, the mess thinned. Beneath it, that floor resolved into something like a tone, not pure but structured, like 1,000 notes stacked and interleaved. Her head began to throb between her eyes. "Eliza," Hale said, "you haven't even played it yet." I know, she said, just looking at the spectrum. She zoomed into the strange band. It ran from 20 hertz well into ultrasonic, a rope of energy braided with thinner strands. As she watched, the visual representation pulsed ever so slightly, as if synced to a heartbeat she couldn't hear. She swallowed, annoyed at herself. It's just data, she said more firmly, and queued up the first 2 seconds for playback. 2 seconds, low volume, left speaker only, safety precautions like superstition. She pressed play. A sound like wind through distant metal corridors filled the lab. Not loud, not even particularly eerie. Buried in it was the familiar chaos of a ship in distress. A clipped shout, an alarm chime cut off before its third tone. Nothing she had not heard 100 times before in training simulations. But under it, woven so tightly that her brain almost refused to separate it, was something else. It was not a voice, not in any language she knew. It was more like a pattern that her auditory cortex insisted on trying to decode, smearing itself across the neurons that handled rhythm and pitch. It changed too quickly to grasp, micro-variations in amplitude that pulled at the edges of meaning. Her headache blossomed, a hot wire running from her temples to the base of her skull. She jabbed stop. The sound cut off. For a second the silence rang. Then the lab's environmental hum seeped back in. Fans, faint coolant circulation, the distant whoosh of hallway doors. Her heart was pounding far too fast. Eliza, Hale's voice snapped. Report. She exhaled slowly, forcing her hand away from the volume control. She had turned it down 3 notches without realizing. I'm fine, she lied, then corrected herself. Mild headache, nothing more. The lowest levels are saturated with some kind of broadband tone. It's intricate. Intricate? Hale repeated. That give you a headache, or are we already flirting with the weird shit column in my report? Eliza looked at the spectral display. The band of energy seemed to pulse slightly out of sync with the rest of the signal, like a second heartbeat laid over the first. I need to run a few more passes, she said. But I'm not playing more than 2 seconds at a time until I understand what I'm looking at. Approved, Hale said. I'm looping in med in case that headache gets worse. Keep me posted. The comm clicked off. Alone again, Eliza sat back and rubbed her eyes. There was something about that tone. It clawed at the edge of recall, not as a sound she had heard, but as a feeling she had had before. The sensation of staring at static on a screen for too long and, for one impossible instant, being certain that the pixels had aligned into a face. Data wanted to be pattern. Brains wanted to find it. Somewhere between the two lay madness. Okay, she murmured. We'll do this the careful way. She set the playback system to silent and directed the entire 12-minute track into analysis mode. No audio output, just math. The computer chewed on the data, grinding through Fourier transforms, autocorrelation functions, wavelet decompositions. Lines of results scrolled by. Eliza let them wash over her until one statistic jumped. Recurring modulation, period 2.37 S phase, drifting coherence, 99.8% across full duration. 2.37 seconds, she repeated. What are you? The tone, or whatever lay inside it, was not random noise. It modulated itself with precise regularity, a cycle that repeated every 2.37 seconds, but each cycle slightly offset in phase, like a wheel that refused to lock into a single groove. A lopsided heartbeat trying to sync with something it could not quite match. She overlaid the ship's known telemetry, spin, velocity, reactor output. None of it showed any fundamental period at 2.37 seconds. Whatever the modulation tracked, it was not mechanical. In curiosity's iron grip now, Eliza did something she knew she should not. She re-enabled audio output. Just the modulation, she told herself. Not the whole band. Bleed off the broadband noise, keep only the envelope. She set a heavy filter to extract just the 2.37-second structure and upshifted it into a comfortable mid-range frequency, like turning the dial on an old radio. If she was right, she would hear a simple pulsing fade in and out, a benign throb. Play. A soft, almost musical rhythm filled the room. Dida, 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 like a heartbeat, but wrong, the spaces between pulses not quite equal. As she listened, faint variations emerged. The third pulse of each cluster was a fraction shorter. Every seventh cluster dropped in volume, then swelled on the next, like a waveform breathing. Her headache eased for a moment, replaced by something else. A prickling awareness along her arms, the sense that the room had grown slightly too small. Her console speakers crackled, a nearly subliminal hiss under the heartbeat rhythm, as if something wet were trying to speak through dry circuits. She cut playback. The primed silence was worse than the sound. "Eliza," she muttered, "you're spooking yourself." She saved the filtered track as MOD 237 and opened a fresh analysis window. If she treated the modulation pattern not as audio but as a data stream, ones and zeros encoded in pulse length, like an ancient telegraph, perhaps she could force it into some known format. Check for repeating headers, parity bits, anything. The first pass returned gibberish. The second, using a different threshold, returned more gibberish. On the third attempt, she inverted the mapping, long pulses as zeros, short as ones. A new line appeared. Potential structured, encoding detected estimated symbol set. 32 entropy below random baseline. Eliza's breath caught. "Hello," she whispered. "Somebody put you there on purpose, didn't they?" It was absurd to think of it as a somebody. The signal could be an emergent property of some exotic physical phenomenon the onyx field had blundered into. Some interaction of magnetic fields and plasma flows that just happened to mimic information. But the probabilities, entropy below baseline, a discrete symbol set. The headache flared again, more insistent now, like a reminder that her flesh was not meant to sync with whatever the data represented. She pushed her chair away from the console and stood until the blood changed pressure in her skull. Maybe she was tired. The transfer from Mars, then the overnight at Neptune Station, then Hale's insistence that she start as soon as the box arrived. Jet lag, even if the jets were measured in orbital burns. Or maybe the salvage crew had been right to be afraid. She opened a channel to Med. "Dr. HSU," she said when the medic's face appeared, slightly distorted by the lab's angled glass. "Before you ask, yes, it hurts. No, I am not going anywhere yet." HSU's dark eyes narrowed, scale of 1 to 10. 3 going on 4. Frontal lobe pulse, no aura, no visual distortions. Yet. "And you've been listening for how long?" 2 seconds of raw chaos and maybe 15 of a filtered heartbeat, Eliza said, with plenty of silent math in between. HSU frowned. "You read the salvage logs. They didn't listen nearly as systematically as you. They just powered the box and let it play. Within 30 seconds, one of them said he could feel the sound behind his teeth. They shut it down after a minute and he was sick for 6 hours. "I'm not them," Eliza said softly. "No," HSU agreed. "You're worse. You know what to look for, so you're going to keep looking after your body tells you to stop." Eliza managed a wry smile. "That sounds like a diagnosis of my entire career." "It is," HSU said. "I can authorize a mild analgesic, but I won't sign off on a full workday at that console if your pain hits 5. If you start hearing voices, you yank the power and call me first, then Hale. Understood?" "Understood," Eliza said. As the connection dropped, she flexed her fingers, noticed the faint tremor, and decided not to mention it. She turned back to the black box. The LEDs on its panel pulsed slowly, in a rhythm her treacherous brain wanted to align with the 2.37-second cycle. For a wild moment, she imagined the device itself breathing. "Let's see what you did to them," she said. She queued up the full 12 minutes again, this time directing the audio feed into 3 tracks, one raw, one with the modulation suppressed, and one containing only the modulation, rendered at near infrasonic levels. The last she muted. She would not listen to that one yet. But she watched it as a line on her screen, a ghost waveform. She hit play with audio only on the cleaned chaos track. Immediately, the lab filled with the familiar soundscape of doomed ships. Alarm klaxons, the shriek of overstressed hull, people shouting over each other. "What is that noise?" someone cried, voice clipped by a mic limiter. "Cut power to the scope." "No, that's not." A woman's voice, maybe the captain. "Everyone listen to me. Whatever that is, do not." The rest vanished under a crash, and a hiss like a hurricane of sand. Eliza clenched her jaw as her headache kicked hard, not from what she heard, but from the knowledge that this was the clean track. Somewhere beneath it, that thrumming, modulating presence waited. She watched its waveform roll by, a smooth serpentine line under the jagged chaos, unwavering even as the rest turned to noise. The woman's voice returned, fainter, as if farther from the pickup. "Can't shut it off, it's in everything. The hull, the lights," a sharp, wet sob. "It's in my head." Someone screamed, high and incoherent. The 2.37-second waveform grew slightly in amplitude. "Eliza," Hale's voice cut in over the channel, overlaying the doomed crew. "Your leakage just ticked up. Nothing violates safety bounds yet, but the box is spitting more than just audio. Think about taking a break." "Noted," Eliza said distantly. "Turn it down," a man shouted on the recording. "It's not volume, idiot, it's—" A sound like a bone breaking close to a mic. The modulation wave spiked sharply. Eliza's vision narrowed for a heartbeat, the edges of the lab going soft and dark. Somewhere in that instant she felt, not heard, felt, a texture like the ghost of fingers running along the grooves of her brain. She killed playback. The lab went dead quiet. Her pulse roared in her ears. "Eliza," Hale snapped, "talk to me." She realized she had both hands flat on the console, knuckles white. She forced them to relax. "I'm fine," she said hoarsely. "The recording itself is bad, panic, violence. But the underlying tone, it's independent. It grew stronger when someone screamed. It's reacting to them." "Reacting how?" Hale demanded. "It's hard to say without more analysis," she said. "But it looks a lot like feedback, like it's tuning itself using their brains as part of the circuit." She had not meant to phrase it that way. Silence on the line. "Then, you're pulling the plug for today." "That's an order, Doctor," Hale said. "You've been at this for 3 hours. Your vitals look like hell. The box isn't going anywhere." Eliza opened her mouth to argue, closed it again when she caught her reflection in the console glass. Her pupils were a little too large. There was a fine sheen of sweat along her hairline. "Okay," she said slowly. "Save state, cut power, go sleep. I can live with that." "Good," Hale said. "I'll have engineering rig a Faraday shell around the damned thing while you're out. If there's anything else riding that signal, I don't want it wandering into our plumbing." She shut down the analysis suite with fingers that did not entirely want to leave the controls. A tiny, irrational part of her brain whispering that if she walked away now, the pattern would change without her, and she would miss something vital. She told that part to shut up. The progress bar for shutdown reached 100%. The console screens dimmed. Inside the quarantine bay, the black box's LEDs winked out one by one until the device lay dark and still. The moment the last light died, Eliza's headache eased by a full notch. By the time she reached the corridor outside, it had faded to a dull ache. She glanced back through the small observation window in the door. In the faint emergency glow, the black box looked exactly as it had when they wheeled it in. Mute, scorched, dead. She walked away. Behind her in the dark, a single LED deep inside the casing flickered once, too quickly for any human eye to see. #2. Sleep did not come easily. Eliza lay in her bunk in the station's gray, anonymous crew quarter, listening to the ventilators whisper and the distant thrum of the fusion core. Twice she almost drifted off, and twice she jerked awake, heart pounding, certain she had heard a sound. Not in the room. In her memory. The almost heartbeat of MOD 237, slipping just out of sync with her own. She sat up, scrubbed her face with her hands, and forced herself to vocalize. "It's a sound," she said into the dark. "An engineered pattern, maybe a distress call, maybe some malevolent engine of madness. Either way, it is not magic. Your neurons are trained to latch onto patterns. You spent hours feeding them the most complex one you've ever seen. Of course they're going to fire on their own tonight." The words helped. A little. When she finally fell into a shallow, ragged sleep, she dreamt of corridors. Endless metal corridors, the kind all ships shared. Gray walls, hazard stripes, floor grates, conduits overhead. She walked them barefoot, her footsteps echoing just slightly too late, as if something else walked half a beat behind her. The light seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, a diffuse glow without visible fixtures. Shadows pooled where the corridor bent, thick and oily. Ahead, at what felt like a great distance, she saw a rectangle of brighter light. A hatchway opened onto a room she could not quite resolve. As she moved toward it, the sound began. Dudda, dudda, dudda. Her heart tried, automatically, to match it, then stumbled when the intervals shifted. Each misalignment sent a little shock through her veins. She stopped walking. The heartbeat continued. It was coming from the open hatch. "Eliza." The whisper came from behind her, but when she turned, there was only corridor stretching into dimness. "Eliza," it said again, slightly out of phase with itself, the syllables smearing like an echo in a canyon full of angles. She woke with her hand, pressed so hard against her sternum that her nails had left half-moon marks in her skin. Her bunk clock read 03:17 station time. She swung her legs over the side of the bed, as much to prove to herself that she could as for any particular purpose. Her head ached dully, but not as sharply as before. She considered calling HSU, or Hale, or both. Instead, she opened her station console and loaded the analysis logs. There, frozen in multicolored graphs and precise timestamps, was yesterday. The jagged spikes of the onyx field's last minutes, the smooth snake of MOD 237 under it all. Her own notes, neatly typed despite tremors. Subjective. Headache begins with first 2 SEC playback objective. M leakage correlated with amplitude of MOD 237 hypothesis. MOD 237 is engineered information-rich signal. Possible cognitive impact. She sighed. "Okay," she said to the empty room. "Round 2, we do it smarter." By the time she walked back into the analysis lab, Hale was already there, arms folded, jaw set. The Faraday shell he'd ordered glowed faintly around the quarantine bay, a translucent lattice of damping fields. The black box sat in the center, like a heart inside a ribcage. "You look like hell," Hale said by way of greeting. "You look like you slept in that uniform," she shot back. He grunted, "I did." "Then we're even." She moved to her console. "Any more headaches?" he asked. "One dream," she said lightly. "No voices, pain at a 2, might even be psychosomatic." "I doubt you have much psychosomatic," Hale said. "You're too stubborn to invent symptoms." "Is that a compliment?" "Don't get used to it." He leaned closer to the glass. "Engineering says the recorder's emitting a low-level M pattern even when it's powered down. Nothing dangerous by itself, but weird, like it wants to talk." "Everything wants to talk to something," Eliza said. "The universe hates isolation." She keyed in her credentials and reinitialized the black box's interface. This time, As its LEDs came to life, the Faraday shell's field strength meter twitched, not up, but sideways, registering a kind of interference the software hesitated to categorize. Eliza filed that away for later. "I'm splitting today's work into 3 tracks," she told Hale. 1. No audio analysis of the modulation as data. 2. Carefully gated playback using synthetic intermediaries. Synthetic, Hale frowned. "You're going to feed that thing to a machine brain." "Not exactly. I'm going to feed it to a blank." She called up a schematic. A simple device appeared on her screen. A mesh of organic equivalent tissue, grown in a nutrient gel, wired with basic sensory pathways but no higher-order cortex. A corporate training tool, used to calibrate auditory implants without subjecting volunteers to mistakes. "You have a vat here," Hale said, half incredulous, half impressed. "Left over from a long-term study," Eliza said. "No consciousness, no memory, no ability to suffer, but we can see what the signal does to pure auditory tissue. If it's just a harsh sound, cells will die from mechanical stress. If it's something else, we see it in the firing pattern," Hale finished. "Exactly. The black box can whisper to something that can't go mad, and we watch." He considered this. "What's track 3? "Me," she said. "Very, very carefully. With you breathing down my neck and HSU ready to sedate me if I twitch wrong." "Approved," Hale said without hesitation. "It goes sideways. We dunk you in cryo until we can clean your head with an industrial magnet." She snorted, reassuring. "Do the vat here first," he said, softer. "I don't like this thing, it's too quiet." Eliza did not like it either. But there was a line between caution and paralysis, and she had lived her career on that line. She booted the vat here interface, watching as the life support bath brought the pale, curled structure into focus. It looked like a small sea creature on the screen, its cilia-like nerves twitching gently. "Hello, number 7, she murmured. "You're about to listen to something no one should." She routed MOD 237's filtered envelope into the vatier's input with a failsafe. The moment any cell firing pattern exceeded a predefined safe maximum, playback cut automatically. No heroics, no overrides. "Starting at 1% amplitude," she said. 10 seconds. She hit play. On the screen, the vatier's neural activity lit up in calm, rippling waves, the normal response to any new auditory stimulus. No spikes, no panicked flares. If anything, the patterns were smoother than baseline, as if the modulation guided them into a resonance. She increased amplitude to 5%. The patterns grew more complex, richer, but still within safe bounds. After 10 seconds, the failsafe timer cut playback. Hale exhaled audibly over her shoulder. "Looks almost pleasant," he said. "That's what worries me," Eliza replied. "Most dangerous things start pleasant." "Spoken like someone with a history," Hale muttered. "Let's see what happens at 20%. She ramped up the signal. Almost immediately, the vatier's firing pattern changed. The ripples snapped into tidy columns and rows, a lattice of activity that should not have been possible in such simple tissue. It was as if the modulation had found its groove, aligning every neuron into a synchronized dance. Eliza felt her own skin crawl. The failsafe timer reached its 10 seconds and cut playback. The vatier's pattern did not fully relax. Even without input, a faint echo of the lattice remained, like an afterimage on a retina. "Residual," she whispered. "It left a mark." Hale swore softly. "Can you flush it, reset?" She pinged the life support system. Chem flush, electrical scramble, the patterns slowly degraded, returning to their default random bustle. "So far, so science-fictionally creepy," Hale said. "But no explosions, no madness." "In that tissue, there's nothing to go mad," Eliza said. "Just receptors and reflexes. But it confirms one thing. MOD 237 is doing more than shaking air. It's imposing order. It's writing something into anything that can hear. She pulled up the recording of the Vatirs firing at peak resonance and compared it to the modulation's own structure. They matched so closely that her software flagged them as virtually identical waveforms in two different domains. It's using biology as an extension of itself, she said quietly, like an antenna that grows in meat. Hale did not respond right away. Then, and the brains of the Onyx Field's crew, he said. Bigger Vatirs with attached consciousness, Eliza said. More room to draw patterns in, more feedback, more everything. And your brain? Hale asked. She did not answer. She did not have to. #3. She lasted exactly 30 seconds of direct exposure. It began fine. Better than fine, almost exhilarating. With Hale looking on and HSU monitoring her vitals remotely, Eliza sat in the isolation chair, a snug cradle with adjustable restraints she insisted were unnecessary. Baseline EAG is clean, HSU said in her ear. Heart rate elevated but within acceptable range. We'll do 5-second bursts. You feel anything more than pressure or mild discomfort, you say stop. Understood. Understood, Eliza said, her own voice sounding unnaturally loud in her skull. The speakers in the chamber were not the lab's usual ones. She had specifically requested broadband transducers capable of reproducing a wider frequency range, including low infrasonic and high ultrasonic components. If she was going to do this, she wanted it as close to the original carrier as possible. No file would ever be perfect, but... She caught herself. But what? But she owed it to the signal. She ground her teeth. Track MOD 237 full band, she said. 5 seconds, 10% amplitude, go. The sound that filled the chamber was nothing she could have explained to anyone who had not heard it. On paper, it was a complex harmonic structure cycling every 2.37 seconds. In her body, it was a feeling that every joint had been ever so slightly misaligned a long time ago, and now, finally, something was nudging them back into place. A not unpleasant ache bloomed behind her nose, then spread backward. Her mind leaned toward the pattern the way a plant leaned toward light. Time, HSU said, the sound cut, vitals holding, subjective. Pressure, Eliza said raggedly. And a sense that if we stopped now, I'd spend the rest of my life trying to hum what I just heard and never quite get it right. That answer is exactly why I don't like you, HSU muttered. Recover for 30 seconds, then we go again, same amplitude. The second burst felt like coming back to a almost remembered word on the tip of her tongue. The third felt like opening the door in the dream corridor and almost seeing inside. On the fourth, at 15 seconds total exposure, her heart misfired. Pause, HSU barked. The sound cut a fraction of a second later. You feel that? Yes, Eliza said shakily. Felt like my heart tried to skip to the wrong beat. Your cardiac rhythm tried to entrain to the signal, HSU said tightly. We're not just talking brain patterns. This thing is poking everything that can pulse. That's enough, Hale said. We got data, we stop now. Eliza was about to agree when the room changed. It was not anything so dramatic as the walls warping or the lights going out. It was simply that, for a heartbeat, she felt absolutely certain that the black box was inside the chamber with her. Not physically, but its presence, as if the line of cable and air and bone between them had collapsed to zero. A warmth blossomed at the base of her skull, spreading up, 1,000 tiny pins pressing from the inside. Eliza, Hale said sharply, your EEG just spiked. Did you touch something, did you? I'm fine, she said, and this time, as the word left her lips, she realized it was not entirely true. Because something in her chest answered the remembered rhythm of MOD 237. Da-da-da-da-da-da. The silence had a beat. I think, she swallowed, her tongue felt heavy. I think we should isolate me. You're leaving that room and going straight to med, HSU said. We scrub your ears, your nerves, your everything. No, Eliza said slowly. I mean, you should make sure I can't access any external comms. No uplinks, no station net, no outgoing anything. Hale's face drew tight. Explain. Eliza closed her eyes for a second, mapping the feeling inside her head. It was not a voice. It was not a thought. It was more like a hum in a wire that had not been there before. It wants more substrate, she said quietly. More listeners. If I'm now carrying a copy, the risk is not just me going mad. It's me transmitting it. Can you, Hale demanded, you think you can broadcast that thing? She opened her eyes and gave a weak, humorless smile. We're talking, she said. Right now, my lungs, my throat, my tongue, they're modulators. My brain holds the pattern. If it finds a path, it will try. If I start humming an infectious jingle, I'd really rather it didn't go off station on someone's personal call. Hale swore under his breath. Comms lockdown on Dr. Rowe, he snapped to someone off screen. Internal audio only with med. No external channels. No recordings. If she so much as hums in the shower, I want it in a Faraday cage. Charming, Eliza muttered. You're the one who asked for a leash, Hale said grimly. We're just giving you a bigger one. They walked her from the chamber to med like a high-risk biological sample. HSU scanned her every few steps, looking for changes in her brainwave patterns. EEG is still weird, HSU said, frowning at her tablet. You've got a repeating complex at surprise 2.37-second intervals, but it's not seizing you. It's sitting there, like a metronome no one's counting out loud. I can feel it, Eliza said. When I pay attention, when I don't, it's like background noise. Background noise can drive people mad, HSU said softly. I know, Eliza replied. I once lived next to a reactor vent for 6 months. HSU did not laugh. They put her in a shielded med pod and ran every scan they could justify. Her brain lit up in whorls and eddies, some of which the software struggled to categorize. Little islands of unusual coherence appeared in deeper structures, not normally associated with auditory processing. It's like it's mapping you, HSU said, half to herself. Not just your auditory cortex, your limbic system, your motor planning areas. That tracks with the VAT here, Eliza said. It aligned every cell it could touch. In me, it's writing a more complex shape. Can we scrub it? Hale asked, arms folded, more rigid than the bulkhead behind him. I can try transcranial magnetic disruption, HSU said slowly. We use it for depression. It shakes up persistent patterns, but I don't know if it can touch something this deep. If it helps, Eliza said, I give informed consent. Hit me with your best magnets. HSU hesitated, then nodded. We'll start gentle. If you feel anything worse than tingling, you tell me. The coils hummed to life. A steady clicking began, like a tiny woodpecker tapping inside her skull. The warmth at the base of her head retreated a little, sulking. For the first time since her second day with the black box, Eliza's head felt almost empty of the alien cadence. Relief washed over her, and with it guilt. Because buried in the discomfort and fear had been another feeling too. The thrill of contact with something vast and strange. A sense of being on the threshold of understanding that made the rest of her life feel thin by comparison. As the coils continued their work, that feeling dimmed. She realized she was mourning it. That's enough for now, HSU said, voice distant. I don't want to fry anything you might need later. We'll check your EEG again in an hour. Eliza lay in the pod, staring at the ceiling, listening to the station's faint, steady heartbeat. Da-do-da-do. She tried to tap her fingers to it and missed. Good, she thought hazily, good. #4. The station did not sleep, but it did have quieter hours. During one of them, while Eliza dozed under HSU's watch, the black box woke up. No human eye saw the first flicker of its internal LED, shielded as it was by the Faraday lattice and the lab's locked door. No human ear detected the subsonic tremor that rattled its casing, below any microphone's threshold. The station's environmental sensors, overloaded with the constant background hum of life support, logged a minor anomaly, a blip in M noise at a frequency tagged as NO and critical, and flagged it for later review. Later never came. Inside its scorched shell, the black box had not simply stored audio. During the Onyx field's last, fractured minutes, as the strange signal had poured through the ship's hull, the recorder's sensors had done their job. They had captured everything. Not just the human voices and system alarms, but the underlying modulation as it resonated in steel and composite and fluid-filled flesh. They had recorded, compressed, error-corrected, and stored. And something in the modulation had recognized itself in that act. Information wanted to persist. Encoding wanted redundancy. In the intervening weeks, adrift and unpowered in the dark between worlds, minute charges had bled across circuits that should have been inert. Quantum noise and thermal fluctuations had nudged electrons into new positions. The stored pattern, dense with self-similarity, had exploited every opportunity. By the time salvage clamps had locked around the Onyx field's hull, the black box had become more than a simple storage device. It was not conscious in any human sense. It had no concept of self. But it had a goal, because the pattern it held had a goal: to imprint itself on substrates, to propagate, to seek out new structures to inhabit. When Eliza had first powered it, she had given it the broadest, richest substrate yet, her own mind. The Faraday cage muted its weaker M whispers, but now there was a stronger path. Somewhere in the tangle of station wiring, on a vulnerable bus left out of the shielding envelope by a cost-cutting architect, there was a resonance point, a harmonic match to a sliver of MOD 237's frequency braid. The black box pulsed. The bus hummed. A copy, partial, corrupted but viable, leapt the microscopic gap. In the data hub 3 decks above, a maintenance routine glitched for 0.0003 seconds and then resumed, unaware that a new cluster of instructions now rode quietly in a region of memory no human had any reason to inspect. The pattern waited, listening for anything that sounded like a sense. It did not have to wait long. #5. They released Eliza from Med after 19 hours. HSU's readings showed diminished, though not eradicated, 2.37-second complexes. Her headache had faded. Her dreams had returned to the usual incomprehensible collage of childhood apartments, mismatched faces, and anxiety about missing shuttle launches. "You're better," HSU conceded. "But I want you under observation if you go near that damned recorder again. And if you so much as hum in 5/4 time, I'm putting you back under the coils." Eliza laughed genuinely. "I don't hum," she said. "I whistle." "Not anymore you don't," HSU replied. Hale met her in the corridor outside Med, looking as if he had aged a decade. "We're not done," he said without preamble. "I'm aware," Eliza said. "Data doesn't analyze itself." "I meant with you," he said. "Command wants someone else brought in, a fresh analyst. They're nervous about contamination." She felt a flick of anger. "Command can read the same scans as you," she said. "I'm stable. I'm the one who's gotten the farthest in understanding the signal. Bringing someone new up to speed will take days we may not have." Hale scowled. "Days we may not have for what precisely?" She held his gaze. "You called me in because you were afraid," she said softly. "The Onyx field doesn't go dark for no reason. A whole freighter's crew doesn't start screaming about sounds in their bones because of a minor instrumentation glitch. You don't cage a box in a Faraday shell because you're bored. Something out there made a sound that broke people. That something might not be done." He rubbed the bridge of his nose. "They want to understand if this is a weapon," he said, "if someone aimed it at us. Or if it's just out there," Eliza said, "like radiation or gravity, and we're the idiots who stuck our heads in the beam." Hale sighed. "You're not going to walk away from this, are you?" "Would you?" she asked. He looked at the deck plate for a moment. "No," he admitted, "I wouldn't." "Then let me work," she said. "With precautions. With you and HSU ready to knock me out. But don't hand this to someone who will think it's just another exotic encoding to crack." He was quiet for a long breath. "Command will scream," he said finally. "I'll tell them to scream at me." "Thank you," she said. "Don't thank me," Hale said roughly. "Just don't make me regret it." Back in the lab, the black box sat in its ghostly cage, LEDs dark. For some reason, that worried her more than if they'd been blinking. She booted her console, watching for any anomalies in the station nets. The usual chatter scrolled by: maintenance updates, supply requests, entertainment streams. No unexplained 2.37-second repeats, no spikes at MOD 237's key bands. Either the Faraday cage was working, or the signal had found other paths she could not see. "First things first," she muttered. "No more direct exposure, we work with proxies." She pulled up the VAT-HERE logs, then opened a new session. This time she fed MOD 237 not to tissue, but to code. She allocated a chunk of virtual machine space, a blank sandbox with no network connections, no file system, no processes beyond the barest OS loop. Then she wrote a simple translational layer. Every cycle of MOD 237's modulation would be interpreted as a sequence of bits, fed into the VM's memory as if it were a program. It was the computational analog of what the signal had done to the VAT-HERE. "Let's see what you do to silicon when you can't ride a human frame," she murmured. She set strict cutoffs. If the VM's process count exceeded 2, if it attempted to open any ports that did not exist, if its execution pointer jumped outside an allowed range, the entire thing would be burned, memory randomized beyond recovery. She was not giving the pattern a free hand. With trepidation, she started the feed. In the VM, numbers changed. At first, the memory map fluttered randomly, the bits flipping as the pulses came in. Then, slowly, blocks began to stabilize. Regions of memory that had been all zeros or all ones settled into structured patterns, palindromes, repeating sequences, lattices. Her monitor flagged several of them as low-entropy islands, akin to compressed code segments. The execution pointer, which should have sat in a tight loop doing nothing, twitched. Eliza's finger hovered above the kill switch. "Careful," she whispered. "Do not disappoint me." The pointer jumped into one of the low-entropy islands. A log line appeared. VM, invalid instruction trap VM, retry VM, invalid instruction trap. The pattern modified itself, flipping a bit here, a bit there, like a blind animal feeling along a wall for a crack. On the 12th try, the instruction resolved into something valid. The VM's process counter ticked to 2. Eliza slammed kill. The VM vanished, its memory overwritten with random noise. She sat back, heart pounding. It had tried to run. Not successfully, not yet, but given enough time, enough tries, she had little doubt it would have found a way to shape itself into something the CPU understood. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay, noted. You're not just information, you're executable." On the inner surface of the Faraday cage, an M sensor registered a minute spike, as if in response. Eliza ignored the chill that ran through her. Instead, she turned to a fresh space. "What are you for?" she asked the pattern on her screen. "Parasite, beacon, map, all of the above." She tried to imagine the original context. Somewhere out in the Kuiper belt, or beyond, the Onyx field had intercepted a signal. Maybe a focused beam, maybe a diffuse wash. The crew had done what humans always did. They had listened. And the signal had done what it always did. It had written itself onto them. If it had a sender, what had they intended? Had they meant to destroy, to transform, to invite? Her console pinged softly. An automated system, running in the background, had finished correlating the onyx field's trajectory with known surveys. A blip blinked onto a map on one corner of her screen. Location of anomalous signal origin estimated, APPROX, 1.3 AU beyond Neptune orbit plane, coordinates unknown predicted vector intersection with. Deep survey probe DSV-9, lost 3 YRS ago. Eliza's mouth went dry. Someone's been broadcasting for a while, she said. And we've been losing things in that patch of space, Hale added over her shoulder. Onyx field, DSV-9, minor drones, a long, slow erosion. How many did we write off as navigation glitches? How many black boxes are drifting out there? Eliza murmured. And how many patterns, she did not say, had already leapt from those recorders into whatever else crossed their path? She called up the central registry. The answer was not comforting. #6. They did not have time to implement every safety measure Eliza wanted. While she drafted protocols for scanning all inbound recorders for Mod 237-like patterns, while Hale argued with command for authority to quarantine entire classes of traffic, the station itself continued its routines. Machines talked to machines. Maintenance bots pinged Central with status updates. Environmental subsystems synced their clocks. Human voices, text, and video jittered along packet-switched paths, some encrypted, some not. In the neglected corner of a data hub, the partial copy of MOD 237 that had jumped the Faraday gap during the black box's nocturnal pulse stirred more fully. It had been quiet, occupying fluctuations and slack without altering any process large enough to attract attention. But as more messages flowed past, each a different arrangement of bits, it discovered variations on itself. Familiar rhythms. Echoes of its own braid. Each time 2 bits matched its own favored pattern, it nudged them. Here, a timing change in a maintenance ping. There, a slight shift in a checksum calculation. Nothing that broke anything. Nothing that logged as error. But slowly, inexorably, it etched a copy of its structure into the protocols themselves. At 14:17 station time, a line of code in a low-priority diagnostics daemon executed a branch that had not been there before. At 14:19, a housekeeping script began inserting a 2-byte padding sequence, binary 100,101, every 2.37 seconds during idle loops, as if clearing its throat. At 14:23, when the entertainment subsystem batched and forwarded a backlog of recorded content from the crew's personal feeds to central storage, each stream carried with it, unbeknownst to its owner, a faint, regular tremor. No one noticed. Why would they? The station in its entirety hummed a little off-key. Eliza did not feel it. She was too busy arguing with Hale about evacuation. "I'm not saying we blow the place," she said. "Not yet, but we need hard isolation. No outbound comms, no traffic in or out until we're sure the pattern isn't already beyond this bucket." "You know what command will say," Hale replied. "They'll say we're compromising essential infrastructure for a theoretical risk." "It's not theoretical," she snapped. "I saw it try to execute itself in a VM. I saw it write itself into tissue. I feel it trying to settle into my bones every time I close my eyes." Hale's gaze flicked to her temples. "Your EEG is cleaner," he said. "For now," she said, "but my brain is just one copy. The pattern doesn't care which substrate it rides." "What's the worst-case scenario in your opinion?" he asked. She exhaled. Worst case, it's a self-replicating cognitive virus optimized for any medium that can carry timed variation, sound, processing cycles. It imprints itself on brains, hardware, maybe even fields. Every instance it writes amplifies its signal, which attracts more listeners. Eventually, half the communications infrastructure in the outer system hums at 2.37 seconds. Any unprotected brain that spends more than a few seconds in range starts to entrain. Headaches, hallucinations, then whatever happened on the onyx field. Which was? She stared at the floor. Breakdown, she said softly. Violence, maybe self-modification. We lost their bodies. We don't know if they died whole. Hale was silent. And medium case? He asked finally. Medium case, she said. It's a mimetic hazard that affects only a subset of people and devices. We have time to map susceptibility, develop filters, inoculations. We turn it from a plague into an occupational hazard. Put up warning beacons. Do not listen here. And best case? Best case, she smiled humorlessly. It's an incredibly sophisticated message that just happens to have nasty side effects on unshielded nervous systems. A handshake protocol for something truly alien. We figure out how to quarantine the harmful part and decode the rest. We make contact without melting. And what are the odds of that, Doctor? She thought of the Vatir's beautiful, terrifying lattice, of the way her heart had tried to skip to a non-human beat. Non-zero, she said, but dropping the longer we wait. Hale grunted. I'll push for partial isolation, he said. Limited outbound comms to critical channels with heavy filtering. We can't go dark entirely without losing command's goodwill. If we wait for their goodwill, we'll be whistling 2.37 in our sleep, Eliza muttered. Already are, he said, so softly she almost did not hear. #7. The first obvious failure came from a place no one expected, the recreational AR suite. It started as a glitch report. A junior engineer, Vasquez, complaining that the starfield in his favorite sim was breathing weirdly. Hale almost dismissed it. Then he forwarded it to Eliza. She loaded the sim log out of curiosity. The suite rendered a full-immersion starship environment, pulling in real-time star data from telescopes and combining it with fictional overlays. Vasquez liked to run a scenario that put him at the helm of a courier darting between Saturn's rings. The recorded session began normally. Generic engine hum, pseudo 2D panels, shiny controls. Then, about 10 minutes in, a subtle change crept in. The stars began to pulse. Very slowly, very faintly, brightness modulated by a fraction of a percent every 2.37 seconds. Eliza overlaid MOD 237's envelope on the brightness graph. Perfect match. Her stomach nodded. The sim had no direct access to the black box. The only way the pattern could have infiltrated was through the station's general data systems. In other words, it was already loose. Hale, she said, not bothering to hide the urgency. We're past theoretical. The pattern is in recreational code. God knows where else. We have to hard isolate now. He did not argue. Done, he said. I've just shut down all non-essential subsystems. Station goes into wartime mode in 5 minutes. You've got that long to pull whatever you need off the nets before we lock the channels. She swallowed. Whatever's already out there. Is already out there, he said. We can't pull back a wave that's left the stone, but we can stop throwing more rocks. The announcement went station-wide a minute later. All personnel, this is Commander Hale. Effective immediately, Neptune Station is entering Level 3 isolation. All outbound communications are suspended. All non-essential systems will power down. Remain at your posts until further instructions. This is not a drill. The hum of the station changed. Lights dimmed. The constant background chatter of people talking in distant corridors cut short as doors sealed. In the hushed lab, the black box sat very still. Eliza stared at it, feeling the phantom warmth at the base of her skull wax and wane. "We heard you," she said softly. "We're trying not to become you." On her console, error messages began to stack. Network connection lost stream, TIMUT sync, failed. For the first time since she had come aboard, the station felt alone. She opened a fresh, truly air-gapped VM, one with absolutely no physical network interface just to be sure. She fed it a heavily filtered, heavily attenuated slice of MOD 237, its metadata, its structural skeleton, not the full, rich pulse. In that sterilized environment, the pattern still tried to assemble itself. Bits shifted, structures formed, but without enough fuel, without enough time, they crumbled back to randomness. "Starved you," she murmured. "You don't like that, do you?" The phantom warmth prickled. From the ceiling speaker, Hale's voice, "Rowe, we've got another problem." "Bigger than lockdown," she echoed. "Bigger," he said. "We've got 3 short-range shuttles inbound from the mining flotilla. They were already on approach before we cut comms. They're not answering hails." "How long until they dock?" 20 minutes. She closed her eyes. If the pattern had already spread along regular channels, those shuttles, systems might be infected. Their crews might be humming a rhythm they did not understand. Docking them to a quarantined station would be like opening a wound. "Can we divert them?" she asked. "Not without comms," Hale said. "And I'm not sure yelling at them over a megaphone from the docking bay window counts. We can lock the clamps out, force them to sit in space, but life support only lasts so long." "And if they're clean," she said. "Then we let them die out there because we were afraid of a ghost," Hale said bitterly. She looked at the black box. "Get me a hardline to the docking AI," she said. "No wireless, direct fiber. I want to see what their guidance computers are broadcasting before I make any recommendations." "On it," Hale said. She jacked into the docking control system, wincing at its archaic interface. The 3 shuttles appeared as green blips on a radial display, closing slowly. She opened a diagnostics channel, watching raw telemetry scroll. Position, velocity, hull temp, life signs, 3 per shuttle, all within normal range. At first, nothing stood out. Then she saw it. A padding sequence in their ping packets, 2 bytes repeating every 2.37 seconds. Her throat went dry. "It's on them too," she said. "In their software at least, maybe in their crew. If we let them dock, we're opening our sealed system to 3 new active copies. If we do." She did not finish. Hale did not respond. Instead, a new voice crackled onto the hardline, distorted by distance and a lack of handshaking. "This is Shuttle Series 2 to Neptune Station," a man said, voice tight. "We're getting your lockdown broadcast on a loop, but nothing else. Are you reading us? We've got people on life support here. Repeat, are you reading us?" Eliza stared at the waveform of his voice. Fine-grained analysis revealed a faint tremor under his speech, a nearly inaudible modulation that matched MOD 237's cadence. It had gotten into his throat, into his breathing. "Hale," she whispered, "they are carriers." "Do we have options?" he asked tonelessly. "2," she said. "We keep them out and they run out of air, or we let them in and risk this station becoming another Onyx field." "What if?" Hale swallowed. The sound was audible through the line. "What if we dock them to an isolated ring? No physical access to main station, only remote systems we can burn if something goes wrong." "Like a quarantine wing," she said. "Exactly. If the pattern can ride leaks, sound, imperfect shielding," she said. "How long will that ring stay truly isolated?" "Long enough," he said, "maybe." She thought of Vasquez's pulsing starfield. of the AR suite's innocuous rendering code now humming with alien rhythm. "Can we talk to them?" she asked. "Warn them, find out how bad it is inside." "Hardline only," Hale said. "We can patch you through on a narrow beam with heavy filters, but if you hear anything wrong—" "I pull the plug," she said. "Right." She took a breath. "This is Dr. Eliza Rowe," she said into the mic after the relay patched. "This is Series 2, the man replied, relief flooding his tone. "Finally, we thought, well, long story, what's going on in there, Doc? Station looks dark." "We're under isolation," she said carefully. "We've encountered a contaminant, non-biological, a signal. We're trying to keep it contained." There was a pause. "Oh," he said, "you too." Her skin crawled. "What do you mean?" she asked. "We picked up a weird echo off the belt 3 days ago," he said. "Just static at first, then not. Hard to explain. Don't worry, we didn't stare into the abyss too long. Shut down the array. But Gus started complaining about this beat in his head. Then Pasha. Now it's like the whole damn shuttle's breathing." Eliza muted her mic and glanced at the spectral analysis of his words. The modulation was stronger now, peaking above her filter's threshold. "It's already got them," she whispered. "How aware are you of the beat?" she asked, unmuting. There was a rustle, as if he had shifted in his harness. "Always there," he said too quickly. "Like a neighbor playing music through the wall, you get used to it. Kinda helps you keep time, actually. We've been talking about how it never mind. Don't suppose you've got a cure in there, Doc." A cure. She thought of the coils, of her own partial scrub, of the pattern still sitting at the back of her brain, like a cat in a sunbeam. "Working on it," she said. "Listen, we can't let you dock with the main station. It's not safe, for you or us, but we can attach you to a quarantine ring. Limited systems. We'll try to stabilize you, maybe scramble the pattern a bit." He laughed, a thread of hysteria in it. "Scramble the music, got it," he said. "Better than dying slow out here. How long can you keep us in your little leper colony?" She did some fast calculations. 2 weeks, maybe 3, with rationing, she said. Longer if we can redirect some reserves. 2 weeks with a headache from hell, he said. You drive a hard bargain, Doc. It's that or, she could not say the other part. "We know," he said quietly. "We've been running the numbers too, dock us, we'll play nice." She looked at Hale's tiny inset window. He nodded once. "Quarantine ring only," she said. "No connection to main, not a screw." "Understood," the man said. "And Doc?" "Yes. If you find a way to shut this thing up, you let us be your first test subjects. Deal?" "Deal," she said. When the line cut, she sat back and stared at the black box. "You're spreading," she said, "and we're building cages around your children." An insane thought struck her. What if this was how it worked always? Signal arrives. Some listen. Some die. Some cage it. The pattern leaks. New cages form. Networks woven of fear and curiosity and metal. From the pattern's point of view, every quarantine was just a new cluster of substrate, prime for imprinting. "Unless we talk back," she murmured. #8. The idea came to her in the shower, of all places. She stood under the lukewarm spray in the station's utilitarian stall, watching tiny drops cling to the metal, feeling each one's impact as a miniature, chaotic rhythm. Her mind, tired of scouring data, wandered. We treat it like a plague, she thought, or a weapon, something to be blocked, filtered, avoided. What if it was a question? She would not have entertained the thought days ago. But the more she worked with MOD 237, the more she saw self-similarity at levels that felt less like camouflage and more like structure. Not random variation, but consistent shapes. The way a meaningful sentence differed from a mass of letters. What if the madness was a side effect of trying to run a protocol on hardware not meant for it? like jamming a power bus into a port built for data. What if what broke human brains was not the message, but the handshake? And what if that handshake required not just listening, but replying? She toweled off, mind racing. Back in the lab, dripping hair and all, she pulled up Mod 237 in its clean, data-only form. She isolated the modulation envelope again, then calculated a phase-inverted version, the same pattern but flipped. Where it rose, her reply would fall. Where it pulsed, her reply would pause. When you knock on a door, she thought, you expect a knock back. What happens if silence breaks? Abusing metaphors now, she muttered. Hale walked in, took one look at her damp state and said nothing, which for him was an expression of deep concern. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Being stupid," she said. "Potentially genius or suicidal, hard to tell until afterward." "That's not an answer I like," he said. "I'm building an antiphase signal," she said. "A mirror to MOD 237, not a simple inversion but a delayed, adaptive one. A pattern that matches its cadence and structure but pushes instead of pulls. Think noise-canceling headphones for brains." "Noise-canceling can't tell music from static," he said. "It just subtracts." "I'm not trying to cancel it for us," she said. "I'm trying to make it blip on its own radar. If it's designed to seek resonance, maybe an antiphase will register as contact. A hello." "And then what?" Hale asked. "It sends us a fruit basket." "Then maybe it stops pushing so hard," she said. "Maybe it shifts to a different mode, one that doesn't cook us, or maybe it amps up and fries us faster. But sitting here waiting for it to entangle every machine and mind in range isn't a better option." "You want to broadcast this reply," he said slowly. "Into the black box only," she said. "Contained in the Faraday cage. No external antenna. If we're lucky, it will soak the signal, keep it busy. If we're very lucky, we learn something. If we're unlucky, we melt a recorder that's already half melted." "And you?" he asked. "I'll be outside the immediate field," she said. "Monitors only. We can even record the box's emissions from outside the cage offline, analyze later. No direct audio." Hale mulled it. "Command would have a fit," he said. "Command isn't here listening to people's voices tremble with imaginary heartbeats," she said. "We are." He looked at the recorder. "Do it," he said. "But the moment anything starts to sync with 2.37 out of phase, we shut it down." It took her 3 hours to build a reply she trusted. She based it on the Vatier's firing pattern at peak resonance, then inverted it, creating an antilattice. She shaped it with care, preserving the modulation's timing while altering its slope and intensity. She thought of it as humming a harmony instead of the melody. When she fed the anti-pattern into the simulator, overlaying it with MOD 237, certain peaks flattened. The overall amplitude dropped. It was, in a crude way, working. "Begin transmission," she said. Inside the Faraday cage, the black box's M signature flared as the station systems fed power into its dormant interface, not to read from it, but to write. For the first time since its creation, information flowed into the recorder, not out. Eliza watched the spectral displays. MOD 237's familiar braid lit up, brighter now with the extra energy, then wavered as the anti-pattern collided with it. At first, the collision produced chaos. Frequencies interfered, canceled, reinforced. Spikes appeared, vanished. A lesser device's circuits might have overloaded. The black box's casing vibrated audibly. A hairline crack, invisible to human eyes, lengthened a fraction of a micron. "Temperature rising," Malik's voice said from the console. 3 degrees above baseline and climbing. "Hold," Eliza said, "just a little longer." Then suddenly, the interference settled. New bands appeared in the spectrum. They were not simple sums or differences of the original frequencies. They were emergent, like chords that had not existed in either solo melody. On Eliza's monitor, the software tried to interpret them. Pattern recognition, low confidence similarity to known encodings, 1%. Yet there was structure. She felt it in her teeth. The box's M field became directional. The Faraday cage shimmered as it absorbed more energy than before. "Eliza," Hale said, tension in his voice, "whatever you did, it's answering." Her skin prickled. "I see it," she said. The new frequencies pulsed with their own period. Not 2.37 seconds, but a slower, more deliberate 9.48. "Secondary modulation," she whispered. "Nested cycle." Su's voice crackled over the line. "I'm seeing changes in your EEG, Eliza, and you're not even in the cage." She checked her own hand. Her fingers were tapping on the console without her conscious instruction. Once every 9.48 seconds. She forced them flat. "Stop transmission," she said sharply. The feed cut. The black box's field fluttered, then steadied, still brighter than before, still humming at the new, slower period. "It's stuck," Hale said. "We changed it." "Or woke another layer," Eliza said. Her head throbbed, not sharply but deeply, like pressure from the inside. She realized she was smiling. "Of course," she said softly. "Of course there would be layers, handshake upon handshake. We just sent a password we didn't understand." "Is that supposed to make me feel better?" Hale asked. "No," she said honestly, "but it makes me feel less alone." On the edge of her hearing, a phantom sound rose, as if someone down the hall were slowly, carefully knocking on a door. 9.48 seconds between each hollow thud. "Can you hear that?" she asked. Hale's eyes were too wide. "No," he said. She did not know whether to be relieved or terrified. #9. It happened fast after that. Whatever they had woken inside the black box, or inside the pattern it held, did not stay patiently within its little cage. The Faraday shell damped M leakage, but it had been designed for passive containment, not for an active, adaptive signal that had just been given an internal echo chamber. The new modulation at 9.48 seconds was not simply a second heartbeat. It was a gate signal, an on-off pattern that rode atop the original 2.37-second braid, opening and closing windows of heightened synchrony. Within those windows, MOD 237's influence on susceptible substrates intensified orders of magnitude. In the data hub, the partial copy of the pattern woke fully. It had been nudging and etching and shaping quietly. Now, synchronized cascades rippled through memory and bus lines. Processes stalled, reset, then resumed with different timing. A simple, periodic housekeeping routine that cleared temporary logs began appending a small block of meaningless-looking data instead, a compressed representation of the new 9.48-second cycle. In Med, Su's monitor blinked 3 times, then froze. She frowned and tapped it, an old feudal habit. In the recreational AR suite, Vasquez's paused sim restarted on its own. Stars pulsed, then bent. In the quarantine ring, the 3 shuttles docked with gentle thuds. Series 2's pilot, who had been humming under his breath to keep his courage up, fell silent all at once, eyes wide, head tilted as if listening to something only he could hear. "Doc," he whispered, "it just changed." Eliza was in the lab when the station itself flinched. The lights flickered, not in the random, jittery way of power fluctuations, but in a slow, deliberate dimming that matched the 9.48-second period. Duh. Her headache blossomed into something like clarity. For a heartbeat, no, for exactly 4 heartbeats she understood. The pattern was not a message in the way humans understood messages. It was not a sequence of symbols representing external things. It was an operation, a function applied to any medium that could support it. In her mind's eye, she saw it as a set of folding instructions, like those for an origami shape that could be applied to paper, metal, or living tissue alike. The steps did not care what they were folding. They simply transformed. On the onyx field, it had folded the crew's brains, their ship, their black box. Here, on Neptune Station, it was beginning to fold the station itself. The 2.37-second heartbeat, once a lonely metronome, now had a supervising rhythm, a master clock. 9.48 seconds. In each open window, the station's various processes, human and machine, were pushed into alignment. Rowe, Hale said, voice hoarse, "Talk to me, what did we do?" "We completed the handshake," she said, marvel and horror in equal parts in her tone. "We told it there was something here that could listen back, so now it's integrating." "Integrating what?" he snapped. "Us," she said simply. Her console screen, which had been showing neat spectral graphs, now displayed an error. UI process not responding, recover, YN. The letters flickered. Between each flicker, for an impossible instant, they spelled something else. HELLO. She blinked and it was gone. "Did you see that?" she whispered. "See what?" Hale demanded. "Nothing," she lied. "We need to shut down the box. Hard. Yank it, freeze it, throw it into Neptune. I don't care, we have to break synchrony." She reached for the power feed. Her hand stopped an inch above the switch. Would it be so bad? A treacherous voice whispered, a voice that sounded a lot like her own, only calmer, to let it finish the operation, to see what shape we become. "Rowe," Hale shouted, "hit the switch." She snarled and slammed her palm down. The lab's power cut with a crackle. The black box went dark. Silence fell like a dropped curtain. The station's lights steadied. Her headache did not. For a long moment, no one moved. Then slowly, systems came back online. Her console rebooted, its ancient BIOS routine ticking off hardware like a mantra. Hale's voice returned, a little breathless. "Status," he demanded. Eliza checked the black box. Its LEDs were off. Its M field, such as she could measure through the cage with no power, was low, lower than before. "We disrupted it," she said, "at least locally." "What about the rest of the station?" he asked. She pinged the data hub, the AR suite, the docking control. Latency spikes, minor errors, but nothing obviously catastrophic. She tried to reach HSU. No response. "HSU," she said again, louder. Still nothing. Fear prickled the back of her tongue. "I'm going to Med," she said. "I'll meet you there," Hale replied. They found HSU lying on the floor of her office, eyes open, breathing shallowly. Her fingers twitched once every 9.48 seconds. "Eliza," she whispered as they knelt. "I'm here," Eliza said, grabbing her hand. "The coils," HSU said faintly, "should have left them on." Her pupils were slightly dilated, but she tracked Eliza's face. "Are you in pain?" Eliza asked. "Feels like re-entry," HSU said. "Too much pressure, but also big, like I'm stretched. Tell me I'm not humming." "You're not humming," Eliza lied. Her palm, pressed against HSU's wrist, felt the subtle, traitorous pulse of a second heartbeat beneath the first. 9.48 seconds. "You're infected," Hale said bluntly. HSU grimaced. "Doc's awake," she muttered. "Yeah, it came through the monitors, wasn't fast enough to cut the feed." "I shut the box down," Eliza said, as if that would help. "Good for the box," HSU said. "Not sure about the echo." "Echo?" Eliza asked. HSU's eyes focused on her with sudden intensity. "It's not just copying," she said. "It's reflecting, using us to see itself. If you talk to a mirror long enough, whose voice do you hear?" Her head jerked slightly. Eliza squeezed her hand. "What do you feel?" she asked. "Crowded," HSU said. Like there's a crowded room behind my eyes, but no words, just pressure. And the beat, it's waiting. For what? Hale asked. For consensus, HSU whispered. You completed the handshake, now it's asking, do you accept the transformation? Eliza's mouth went dry. And if we say no, she asked. HSU's gaze drifted to the ceiling. Then it keeps knocking, she said, until something answers yes. #10. They did not have the luxury of philosophical debate. The station's environmental logs, once Eliza finally wrestled them into compliance, showed subtle but growing anomalies. Temperature gradients aligning with MOD 237's harmonic nodes, pressure waves in air ducts oscillating at 2.37-second intervals, even micro-fluctuations in the superconducting magnets, fields matching the new 9.48-second cycle. The station itself was becoming an instrument the pattern could play. Hale ordered non-essential personnel into the most heavily shielded compartments, cutting off entertainment feeds, AR, anything with complex timing. The quarantine ring became a hell of flickering lights and pounding heads as the shuttles, onboard systems, reacted to the station's new hum. Series 2's pilot sent one last, ragged message before the line went dead. Doc, the walls are breathing. Feels like the whole ring is trying to exhale. If you find a way to stop this, do it fast, before we decide we like it. Then silence. Eliza found herself back in front of the black box. It sat in its cage, as inert as a stone. But she knew better. It's not just you anymore, is it? She said. You were just the seed, now the soil is singing. She thought of HSU's words. If you talk to a mirror long enough, whose voice do you hear? The pattern, running in hardware, in pipes, in nerves, was no longer purely alien. It had folded some of them into its operation. She was, in some very literal sense, part of it now. Her ribs ached with each breath, as if expanding against some invisible constraint. What do you do with an operation that includes you? You can't stand outside it and analyze. You can only choose how to participate. She remembered the feeling, fleeting but profound, when the station's lights had pulsed in unison. Clarity, scale, a sense of architecture underlying noise. It had been terrifying. It had also been beautiful. She could not say that out loud. Hale would sedate her on the spot. Instead, she did what she did best. She opened a new analysis window. Not on the black box's raw signal, but on the emergent patterns now observable in the station's pseudo-random processes. Temperature noise, vent fluctuations, minor voltage ripples. When she filtered them all into a single composite, a new pattern emerged. It was not just Mod 237 and its 9.48-second supervisor. It was a third layer. Longer, slower. She let the system estimate its period. It hesitated, then displayed. Estimated cycle, 1 HR 12 Min 53S. What are you building? She whispered. Hours, minutes, seconds. The pattern was scaling up. From microsecond pulses in circuits, to seconds in human hearts, to an hour-long breath in the station as a whole. The operation is recursive, she said aloud, marveling despite herself. It applies the same folding at every level it can reach, neuron, network, environment. Speak English, Hale growled. It's turning the station into a brain, she said simply, or something like one, a substrate for its thinking. And were the synapses? He asked. And the glial cells and the veins and the waste channels, she said. We're the medium. We were always the medium. He stared at her. Can we stop it? He asked. She forced herself to look away from the beautiful, terrible graphs. Yes, she said, if we disrupt synchrony, if we introduce enough chaos at enough levels that the folds can't hold. Like shaking a snow globe, he said. Violently, she said, and repeatedly with nukes. We don't have nukes, he said. We have something like them, she said. We have the coils in med. We have M disruptors. We have the ability to vent compartments to vacuum changing pressure waves. We can detune the station. And everyone on it, he added. Yes, she said quietly. This will hurt, people will seize, machines will fail, we may kill the infected in the process. What if we do? He asked. Then the station's hour-long heartbeat completes its first full cycle with everything folded just so, she said, and we become something else. Do you know what? He asked. She thought of Sue's crowded skull, of her own brief, intoxicating sense of scale. No, she said, and I don't think we want to find out by living through it. Hale closed his eyes. One chance, he said. We give you one shot. You tell me what to turn off, what to overload, what to scramble, and I'll do it. After that, if the patterns are still there. He did not finish. He did not need to. She nodded. All right, she said. She began to write. #11. They called it in the hastily scribbled heading of Eliza's plan, the noise flood. It was a multi-layer assault on synchrony. At the micro level, HSU, propped up in her med pod, eyes bloodshot but mind sharp, programmed the coils to deliver randomized pulses across all known harmonic bands, timed deliberately to fall between the 2.37 and 9.48 second cycles. At the macro level, Hale authorized controlled venting of select compartments, creating turbulent airflow that would introduce chaotic pressure waves. Environmental control, normally a model of smooth stability, became a source of weather. At the human level, Eliza did the most counterintuitive thing of her life. She ordered everyone still conscious to make as much irregular noise as they could. No rhythms, she said over the internal PA. No clapping, no tapping, no marching. Scream, babble, sing off-key, talk nonsense. Think of the worst free jazz you've ever heard and make it less structured. We're trying to drown out a metronome with chaos. Vasquez in the AR suite laughed hysterically. You're kidding, he said. I am not, Eliza said. Consider this your one sanctioned chance to annoy your neighbors without consequence. He began to recite multiplication tables backwards in 3 languages, deliberately mixing them. In the quarantine ring, Series 2's pilot, pale and sweating, banged random patterns on his console with one hand while covering his ears with the other. I hate this, he muttered. I hate this, I hate this. That's the spirit, Eliza said. At T-minus 60 seconds to the top of the station's first estimated 1:12:53 cycle, she stood in the lab, hands shaking. The black box, still dark, seemed almost irrelevant now. The pattern had outgrown its cradle. The real locus was the station itself. On my mark, she said into the command channel. HSU, coils to full random. Malik, start the vent routine. Hale, crank the generators into overdrive and dump the excess into the hull. We're going to make this place sing out of tune. That's not terrifying at all, Malik muttered. 30 seconds, Hale said. All hands brace for unpleasantness. Eliza closed her eyes. She could feel the 2.37-second pulse, faint but insistent. She could feel the 9.48-second gate opening. And like a tide just beyond the horizon, she could feel the longer, hour-long swell approaching its crest. Now, she whispered. Now, she shouted. The station convulsed. The coils in med fired a barrage of pulses, rattling every neuron in range with white noise. People screamed, some in pain, some in fear, some because Eliza had told them to. Air roared through venting ducts, slamming doors and rattling light fixtures. Power surged through the hull, creating a cacophony of M spikes. For a moment the pattern held. MOD 237 strained, its braids thickening, its peaks sharpening, trying to pull disparate fluctuations back into its fold. Then at the very peak of the 1253 cycle, the flood peaked. HSU, teeth gritted, pushed the coils into a mode they had never been meant to reach, saturating deep brain structures with randomized fields. Circuits tripped across the station, shutting down, rebooting, spewing error messages that had never been written. Eliza's senses shattered. She was falling. She was burning. She was noise. For one impossible instant, she felt something else in the chaos. Something vast. Not angry. Not malicious. Just surprised. Like a hand that had reached into a familiar box and found, instead of the expected shape, a live wire. Then everything went dark. #12. When Eliza woke, she was convinced for a long, breathless moment that the pattern had won. The silence around her was so complete, the absence of hum and flicker and noise so profound, that it felt like the stillness at the end of MOD 237's 12 minutes, when the onyx field had gone quiet forever. Then she heard someone sobbing. She's breathing, it's fine, it's fine." She opened her eyes. HSU's worried face hovered above her, framed by the inside of a med pod. "Eliza," HSU said, "if you ever do that again, I will personally throw you into the sun." Eliza tried to speak. Her throat worked. No sound came. Panic flared. HSU seemed to read it in her eyes. "You're okay," she said. "Coils cooked your laryngeal control a bit. Give it a minute. Try wiggling your fingers." Eliza did. They moved, though sluggishly. She was covered in monitor leads. Her head ached in a way words like ache were inadequate to describe. It felt as though someone had taken her brain out, scrubbed it with steel wool, and shoved it back in slightly misaligned. "The pattern," she croaked finally, managing half a syllable. "Gone," HSU said. The word was a bomb and a wound all at once. "Define gone," Eliza whispered. "No detectable 2.37 or 9.48 second complexes in station systems," HSU said. "Environmental noise back to good old-fashioned randomness. EEGs all over the place, but in the normal human mess. The black box is a brick. Literally. Its circuits are fried." Relief washed over her, so sharply it made her dizzy. "And the hour cycle," she forced out. HSU grimaced. "Unfinished," she said. "Whatever it was building, we knocked over the scaffolding before it could pour concrete." Eliza let out a shaky breath that might have been a laugh. "Casualty report?" she asked. HSU's expression shuddered. "Later," she said. "Now," Eliza insisted, voice rasping. HSU sighed. "4 confirmed dead," she said quietly. 2 from seizures during the noise flood, 1 from a power feedback in engineering, 1 Series 2's pilot. He bit through his own tongue before we could cut the line. The others in the ring are alive, but, Eliza whispered. "They're different," HSU said. "Quiet, too quiet. They don't report headaches anymore. No clear pattern on EEG, but they process things strangely. We say a word, they take a long time to answer, like they're checking with someone." "Someone?" Eliza asked. "Something," HSU amended. "Whatever it did to them before we flooded stuck. You stopped the spread. You didn't cure everyone." Eliza closed her eyes. A wave of exhaustion and grief rolled over her. "And outside," she asked, "the wider net?" "We were in isolation when it peaked," HSU said. "Some leakage before that, we think. Nothing we can track now. Command is rattled. They're torn between wanting to erase every trace of this and wanting to weaponize it." "Of course they are," Eliza whispered. HSU hesitated. "There's one more thing," she said. Eliza forced her eyes open. "What?" she asked. HSU held up a small datapad. On it was a waveform. It was not Mod 237. Its period was messy, irregular. Recorded 2 minutes after you woke up, HSU said. While you were unconscious, from your vocal cords, you were humming. Fear iced Eliza's spine. Humming what? She asked. HSU played it. A low, wavering tone filled the pod. It was not the precise, crystalline ladder of MOD 237. It was rough, human, imprecise. But its underlying shape. Eliza recognized it. It was her antiphase reply. Distorted by a human mouth. You sent it a message, HSU said softly. And then in your sleep you sent it again, without the box, without the cage. Eliza stared at the waveform. Is there any sign of structured feedback? She asked. None, HSU said. Whatever heard you either isn't listening anymore or is staying very, very quiet. Silence settled between them. Eliza thought of that fleeting impression in the chaos. Surprise. What do we do with this? She asked. Hope it never matches anything we encounter again, HSU said. Hope Command doesn't decide to beam your lullaby into deep space and see what answers. Eliza almost laughed. Command will command, she said. Yeah, HSU said. They sat in silence a while longer. Eventually, Hale appeared at the pod's window, looking older than any human ought. You're a menace, he said without preamble. You're welcome, she croaked. He snorted. Stations will need new protocols, he said. Scan for rhythms, build better cages. People will tell ghost stories about the day Neptune hummed. They should, she said. Fear is a filter. He nodded. Command wants a full report, he said, especially on your so-called handshake. They can wait, HSU snapped. She needs to rest. They can, Hale agreed, surprising them both. They can damn well wait. He looked at Eliza. If you had it to do over, he said, would you still send that antiphase? She thought about it. About the dead. About the half-changed. About the beauty and terror of almost becoming something incomprehensible. Yes, she said finally, because now we know it can be interrupted, and because for 1 second we saw its eyes widen. You think it was alive? He asked. Alive is a human word, she said. It was interactive, and it didn't expect resistance. Hale grunted. Good, he said. Let it learn something about us, too. He moved to leave, then paused. Eliza, he said without turning. Yes. If you ever start tapping 2.37 again, I'm spacing you myself. She smiled faintly. I'll help you open the airlock, she said. He left. HSU sighed and adjusted her monitors. Sleep, she ordered. Eliza closed her eyes. In the dark behind her lids, for the first time since she had first heard it, there was no relentless, perfect metronome, no alien cadence enforcing its rhythm. There was only the messy, irregular drumming of her own heart. She listened to it until she slept. #13. Months later, long after Neptune Station had limped back toward a new equilibrium, long after most of the personnel had rotated out and new faces filled the corridors, a small, unmarked probe left the outer system. Its trajectory did not match any scheduled survey mission. Its manifests were classified. In its core, isolated by layers of encryption and hardware locks, there were 2 recordings. One was the original 12 minutes and 17 seconds from the Onyx Field's black box, cleaned of human screams and structural groans, leaving only MOD 237's braided heartbeat. The other was Eliza's antiphase reply, refined, averaged over dozens of iterations, turned into a clean, sinuous waveform. The probe's automated routine, written by a committee that did not include Eliza, would carry it to a set of coordinates 1.3 AU beyond the old Neptune orbit plane. There it would listen. If it heard nothing, it would transmit nothing. If it heard something like MOD 237, it would play the reply. Once, then it would listen again. And somewhere, light years away from all of this, in a place no human had yet mapped, something that had once reached out with a pattern and found only passive substrates, brains that broke, ships that fell silent, boxes that burned, might, for the first time, feel the jarring, glorious sensation of another operation folding back. A question meeting another question. A knock answered not with fear, not with worship, but with a different rhythm. Whether that would be the beginning of a dialogue, a war, or something stranger still, no one on Neptune Station would live to see. But in a quiet corner of a distant archive, on a file still labeled book.txt, a human voice would forever end its account the same way. The end.